All right, everybody, welcome back into Cherry Picking today's video. Fantasy hockey must drop for week 11 of the NHL season. The video is always presented by FanDuel Canada, North America's #1 sportsbook. That link will be in the description down low to download the app. Today's video, must drop for week 11. This week, an interesting week, obviously, because the games stop on Saturday with the 3 or 4 day break for Christmas break for the NHL hockey players. But 6 guys on must drop this week. 2 goalies actually on this list. One of the goalies just injured, and the other goalie actually just got waived. I'm sure if you've been following the hockey news, you know who it is, but want to mention that player because there's definitely a goalie who they just called up who could be a huge steal for your fantasy hockey teams for the rest of the season. So let's get into today's video. All right, so the first guy we're going to be looking to drop this week is Teuvo Teravainen on the Carolina Hurricanes. 52% rostered, but unfortunately, if you've had him on your team after the month of October, he's just been a huge disappointment. Has 3 goals since November 1st and just 3 points in the month of December so far. Something I actually was in my buy low, sell high, second or third week of the season. Told you to sell high on Teuvo Teravainen because if you look at his month of October, you can kind of see this coming. October, he had 8 goals in 10 games on 22 shots. That's a shooting percentage of 36%. This is not something that any NHL hockey player can really be sustainable with. His volume of shots just wasn't high enough to think that he was going to continue to carry on that production, and we've seen it unfortunately regress for Teuvo here. But the one thing that is kind of shocking for him, his last game he played 20 minutes against the Washington Capitals. He didn't record a single stat. No blocks, no hits, no shots, no goals, assists. Not even a plus-minus. They ended up losing that game 2-1, but really not having a huge impact on this team right now. As I mentioned at the beginning of the season, he was really solid, but working off a really high shooting percentage, so was way too efficient to make it keep going here. So it doesn't really matter where he's plugged into this lineup at this point. It doesn't really seem like he's going to have a ton of success right now playing on that second line with Jesperi Kotkaniemi and Marty Necas. Marty Necas starting to play a little bit better, but definitely a guy who's having a down year after last year's season. Kotkaniemi, similar kind of light as of right now, was one of their best players to start off the season with a couple of forwards injured and now kind of regressed back to what we're normally used to seeing from Jesperi Kotkaniemi. So I just think Teuvo Teravainen at this point is not someone that should be on anyone's fantasy hockey roster. All right, so the next guy we're going to be dropping a goalie, the first of 2 goalies we're dropping this week, and that's Alex Lyon on the Detroit Red Wings. Unfortunately, this is just unfortunate circumstances for Lyon, who is hurt right now, and it doesn't really make sense to keep him, considering coming into the season he was the 3rd goaltender on this team, and the only time he actually got to play was when Ville Husso left the Sweden trip and had to go back because his first kid, or his wife just had his first kid. He wanted to be with his wife for about a week or so missed a couple games. Alex Lyon ended up playing really well in the interim for him, started to play a little bit more, but now we're going to see a mix of Ville Husso and James Reimer, and God forbid if one of those goalies actually start playing well and can help Detroit win games. I find it very hard to see Alex Lyon get back into this mix after missing a little bit of time, because if he misses and doesn't play before the break here, then the Christmas break after that's about another week and a half, 2 weeks, and if he doesn't come back right after the Christmas break, he kind of could get lost in the fold. That's what happened with him before we saw at the beginning of the season. So there's a lot of other goalies out there right now that could be better options, guys who have a better chance of playing sooner. If you are in desperate need of a goalie, there's no point of hanging on to him unless you have like a boatload of IR spots at this point. But at this point of the season, I feel like that might be a little bit of a taller task to ask, so I would just recommend dropping him. All right, so the next guy I'm going to suggest to drop here, and it's pretty definitive at this point because he's no longer on an NHL team, and that's Antti Raanta. Just got waived by the Carolina Hurricanes. No one picked him up off waivers, so he cleared waivers, now in the AHL for the Hurricanes. Can't really see him coming back at any point unless the Carolina Hurricanes are like extremely desperate, but I don't think he's worth owning in fantasy hockey anyway at this point. At this point in the NHL season, he is last in the NHL in goals saved above expected. So pretty much every time he's made a start for this Carolina team this season, he has not helped them win in any fashion. So obviously a very easy, I would say, resolution here for the Carolina Hurricanes. Obviously a little bit sad to see him go, but you could definitely drop him off your roster. The main reason why I wanted to pick him up or talk about this goalie situation that's going on in Carolina is just because now there's just Pyotr Kochetkov. They're bringing in Aaron Dell for a PTO, but they have also recalled their ECHL goalie from the Norfolk Admirals, Yaniv Peretz. And this kid is unreal. If you haven't heard about this kid, last year was part of the 2023 NCAA champion Quinnipiac Quinnipiac Bobcats team, and pretty much the main reason why they won that whole tournament, making it into March Madness for the NCAA Ice Hockey Championship. Played from the 2021 to 2023 season, posted 56-9-5 record, a 1.34 goals against average, 940 save percentage, and 21 shutouts. 21 shutouts in 70 games. That's a shutout almost every third or fourth game about. So obviously dominated the NCAA ranks. It's obviously very different playing in the NHL, but looking at his interview and just some of the quotes that he's had after being recalled by the Hurricanes, coming up from the ECHL, skipping the AHL and going right to the NHL, he seemed relatively confident and pretty confident. So just keep your eye. I don't think you could even pick him up at this point, but just keep your eye on kind of where he ends up for this Carolina team in the next couple of weeks. Because if he does start to get a couple starts and he plays well, Rob Brind'Amour will rely on him a lot, and he could be an absolute steal for the rest of the season. Because we've seen a multitude of goalies succeed in this Carolina style of play. You know, very defensive, block a lot of shots, and then just absolutely dominate the shot attempt share. So obviously you're going to be dropping Antti Raanta. Keep your eye on Aaron Dell as well as he goes through this PTO. But definitely, I think the guy in the end who we're going to want to add is Yanni Perez. All right, so another forward we're going to be dropping right now is Nick Schmaltz on the Arizona Coyotes. 28% rostered. He's pointless in 6 straight games. 3 goals in the first 2 games of December, but has not done anything since then. Played a 2-month low of 17 minutes and 30 seconds in their most recent game against Buffalo, as they ended up winning that game 2-0. The problem with this Arizona team, the way they win these games are just off the back of really solid goaltending right now. Connor Ingram is playing out of his mind. Karel Vejmelka is getting starts here and there where he's also playing really well. So those 2 goalies making this Arizona team look a lot better because they're not scoring a ton of goals right now. Top 4 shooting percentage in the NHL. Schmaltz is also helping with that number at a 15% rate for himself. I think we'll continue to see this Arizona offense kind of regress, which means I think we'll continue to see this top line regress, as right now the top line is Clayton Keller, Nick Schmaltz, and Jason Zucker, and they have been horrible, to say the least. Out of line combinations that have played at least 40 minutes so far this season, their expected goals for percentage is 42nd. That ranks 203rd out of line combinations that have played 40 minutes together. So that's a really low number, really not creating a ton of quality offense to go against their opponents right now. Nick Schmaltz averaging 2 shots per game with 60 shots on goal in 30 games played so far this year. Really not reassuring to have a guy on your team that's barely getting 2 shots on goal per game. I know in certain scenarios, in certain leagues, you kind of have to own guys like Nick Schmaltz, but I really do think there's better streaming options at this point. If you have a guy on your team that consistently getting 0 points, I don't know why you'd keep him on your team. There's definitely guys who are going through waves that you can find on your waiver wire who are less than 5% rostered that are definitely better plug and plays than Nick Schmaltz at this point. So definitely get Nick Schmaltz, or honestly, most Arizona Coyote players off your team. All right, so the last guy we're going to be dropping is Jake DeBrusk on the Boston Bruins. 34% rostered and has that ability to play left wing and right wing in Yahoo Fantasy Hockey Leagues, which is obviously very important, but just 2 points in the month of December, no goals, still 34% rostered. That doesn't make a ton of sense to me. I don't really think Jake DeBrusk right now deserves a roster spot. A couple weeks ago, I understand he was on my must add, and Boston was playing 4 games. He was starting to play a little bit better, but now we've seen his volume of offense go down along with his ice time, I think, as well, because I just think Jim Montgomery's starting to realize that maybe he is not the guy that we saw maybe last year playing alongside David Pastrnak and Patrice Bergeron. He's kind of showing it. Playing on the second line with Coyle and Marchand, you'd think he'd have more than 11 points in 30 games, but out of lines that have played 60 minutes this year, they rank 77th, in expected goals for percentage. So a number you'd think with those 3 players would create a lot more offense and be able to score a lot of goals, but still we're seeing the same Boston team we've seen last year minus Patrice Bergeron and David Krejci. All the offense is coming from David Pastrnak pretty much, and then solid defensive play with really good goaltending as well. So I don't know how many other players you can kind of rely on. Pavel Zacha's out right now. I don't think that really affects Jake DeBrusk in a positive way. If anything, I think the better ad right now is Morgan Geekie. Since Pavel Zacha went down, Morgan Geekie has 2 goals and 3 points in the 3 games that Zacha has missed. So playing that first line center and on that first power play line has obviously really helped Morgan Geekie, especially in terms of producing points here. So I think that's a better ad than Jake DeBrusk right now. Jake DeBrusk just a little too inconsistent for my liking, and with how brutal he's been in December, I think you can finally cut ties with Jake DeBrusk. All right, thank you guys for tuning in to Fantasy Hockey Week 11 Must Drop. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Download that FanDuel Canada app. That link is in the description below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.